Now you should understand why consistency is so important. Because when you're consistent, you can learn from your previous meals. That means you can fine tune your bowls until you get it just right and you can find better, more predictable blood sugars. Consistency is key, but it doesn't mean you have to eat the same thing every single day forever. Consistency means things need to be the same, but it doesn't have to be like that. What's really important is keeping your meals the same, as in keeping your breakfast the same, your lunch the same, and your dinner the same from one day to the next. And again, by same, I don't mean it has to be the exact same foods, although it can be. What I mean is that it needs to have the same macros, most notably the same carbs and protein, although fat can play a role too, although smaller. If you have the same macros for your breakfast from one day to the next, same macros for lunch, same macros for dinner, then you're going to be able to find much better blood sugars because your results are going to be much less variable. Now, it's important to keep those meals, breakfast, lunch, dinner, the same because your insulin sensitivity might be different depending on the time of day, and your digestibility might be different, and so on. So it's best at least to keep your breakfast, your lunch, your dinner, your specific meals from one day to the next the same. Same carbs, same protein, maybe even the same fat. By doing so, you'll be able to learn from one day to the next. You'll be able to turn each meal every day into an experiment, and then take what you learned from that experiment and apply it to your experiment the next day, and the day after that, and the day after that, until you get it just right. The ideal and simplest way really is to eat the same thing. It's less of a headache, and if as long as you do it for at least a few days at a time, you'll be able to really master your blood sugars. And that's exactly what I do right now. What I do right now is essentially I portion up my steaks into equal portions with about the same fat and protein per steak. And I have one steak for breakfast, one steak for dinner. I skip lunch. And it works out very well because I keep those things consistent. I'm able to actually fine tune my blood sugars very well because of that. And I am able to actually boast about very good blood sugars throughout the day. It's amazing. And whenever I get bored of eating the same thing, I can switch up to something else for a few more days or for a week or however long it takes for me to get bored of that. That said, that is what I call the ideal, but you don't have to do it that way. If you need more variety, if that seems a little bit too much for you to eat the same thing for at least a few days at a time, then you can still implement some variety as long as you keep the macros the same. For example of variety, let me give you an example straight out of Dr. Bernstein's book, Dr. Bernstein's Diabetes Solution, where he goes over 3 days of meals where the macros, being the carbs and the protein, are the same, yet it's different food each day. So, to read, he starts out with a meal plan where you're eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, so 3 meals a day, and you're planning to eat 6 carbs for breakfast, 3 ounces of protein for breakfast, 12 carbs and 4 ounces of protein for lunch, and 12 carbs and 5 ounces of protein for dinner. Now, one reason there's less carbs at breakfast is because of the dawn phenomenon. It is actually a good idea to keep your breakfast lower carb as much as you can compared to your other meals. Anyways, on to his little meal plan here. So to measure it all out, what he wants to do is to make breakfast each of these 3 days 6 grams of carbs, 3 ounces of protein, and on with the rest of them. So to start, breakfast, he decides to have a mushroom omelet with bacon and a Wassa Crisp and Light 7-grain cracker bread with butter, which is basically a low-carb cracker of sorts. That totals up to 7 carbs and about 2.9 ounces of protein. Great. Lunch. He has green cabbage claw soft lemon zest, Scandinavian brand crisp bread, and 2 frankfurters, totaling up to 11.8 carbs and 3.6 ounces of protein. And for dinner, he has 2/3 cup of mixed salad with oil, vinegar, and spices, 2 tablespoons of caramel blue cheese on the salad, because you want to add the protein and fat from that, and of course pan-fried swordfish with ginger, scallion, and butter. Ends up being 12 grams of carbs and 5.5 ounces of protein. Now notice, just off the bat, these aren't exactly 6 carbs, exactly 3 ounces of protein, exactly 12 carbs, exactly 4 ounces. It varies a little bit by at most zero point 0.5 or zero point 0.5 ounces of protein or 1 gram of carbs. And that little bit of difference can be fine. It's not a big deal. The closer you are, the better. Day 2. For breakfast, he has pancakes and 2 sausage patties. 7.6 carbs for the pancakes, almond flour pancakes, low carb, and 3.4 ounces of protein. Again, slightly different, but still close enough to that first breakfast to be able to um, lessen that variability significantly. Lunch, 2 cups of salad, small can of tuna, slice of American cheese. And a light, as in a very low carb beer, ends up being about 13 carbs and about 3.5 ounces of protein. Supper, quiche Lorraine and chocolate souffle ends up being, yes, low carb chocolate souffle. There's amazing ideas out there. Ends up being 12 carbs and 4.5 ounces of protein. Again, very close to the day before. The breakfast had the same carbs and protein second day as the first day. Lunch had the same carbs and protein as the second day to the first day. And dinner had the same carbs and protein as the dinner the day before. And on the third day for breakfast, he had 2 ounces of smoked Nova Scotia salmon, 2 Waspa Crisp and Light 7 grain cracker breads, and 2 cheese puffs. Low carb cheese puffs, you can make them yourself. And that ends up being 5.3 grams of carbs and 3.4 ounces of protein. Lunch, avocado spread, green bell peppers, hamburger meat, and some bacon bits? Some bacon bits. About 12.4 carbs and 4.4 ounces of protein. And then dinner, medium artichoke boiled served with melted butter, and then 4.5 ounces of meat. Ends up being 12.4 carbs and 5 ounces of protein. As you can see, every single meal, every single day of this was different. There was a ton of variety here. Yet, every meal, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, had very similar macronutrient profiles. The breakfast on the first day, the second day, and the third day had about the same carbs and protein. The lunch on the first day, second day, and third day had about the same carbs and protein. And the dinner, first day, second day, and third day, had the same or very similar carbs and protein. Now, I believe fat plays a role too, somewhat, but not nearly as much. The carbs and protein are the most important. And they were all very, very similar. It's not about you don't have to have your meals exactly the same from one meal to the next, but you should have your meals from one day to the next the same. That's what really counts. Now, I still prefer the eat the same thing every day, just find something you like and stick with it approach, just because it's simple, just because it's easy. But you can do it either way if you need more variety, and you'll be able to find much better blood sugars from that. As long as you keep those macros consistent, you'll be able to consistently experiment, find out exactly how much insulin you need for this meal, and so on. You'll be able to tame that type 1. Now, given that you need to keep these macros the same, or eat the same thing, you need to learn how to measure out your food appropriately, weigh it out, and know exactly what you're eating. That's what we'll go over next. So remember, eat consistently. Whatever you have for breakfast one day, have the next day. At least keep the carbs and protein the same. Same for lunch, same for dinner. Try to keep it as consistent as possible. And next we're going to go over weighing and measuring out your food. See you there.